nearly 100 people are listed in the credits for Hollow Knight Silksong.
But who actually made Hollow Knight Silksong?
A critical error is an error which the OS cannot reasonably ignore. Jake Steinberg is a streamer, writer, and certified yapper. Complimentary. Peter Hunt Szpytek is a YouTuber, journalist, and certified yapper. Derogatory. These are the things they cannot reasonably ignore.
Jake, this past week saw the release of Hollow Knight Silksong, one of the most anticipated games, I would argue, of the decade. And there's been a lot of discourse surrounding the concepts with its development. Team Cherry is a team of just 3 people at the studio. And there's been a lot of conversation happening about, can you say that the game was made by just 3 people? Because when you look at the credits, almost 100 people are listed there. So there's this big question surrounding authorship and how we discuss how games are made. Very similar to a conversation had earlier this year about, I think it was like 30-ish people that supposedly made Expedition 33, which has then been revealed that when you look at the credits and everything, like, no, way more people worked on this than just 30 people. Same conversation here. Hollow Knight Silksong, the story is made by just 3 people. But the question is, how do we define who made something when it comes to giant collaborative projects? Because it is inaccurate to say that Hollow Knight Silksong was made by just 3 people. However, when it comes down to who actually created this thing, that's when things start to get a little bit more nuanced. And I feel like a lot of the conversations that are happening, the backlash to this idea that just 3 people made this game, has been really interesting, because I think a lot of it has been lacking some of the context and understanding that we have implied when we talk about the creation of collaborative projects. What do you think of all this, Jake?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, over the past week, Silksong, obviously a discourse magnet going in so many different directions. And I think I was genuinely surprised to see the almost emotional reactions that people had to people saying that this game was made by 3 people. And I think when we're talking about this, what I'm referring to specifically, and I think what we're referring to specifically, is like the ways in which media were covering this game, how people were talking about it, because we know that, like, Silksong specifically is not doing this like weird thing in the credits where it's like, oh yeah, 3 people made this game and we're hiding people. Like, no, as we said earlier, the credits do list everyone who worked on the game. So that's not the issue, but it is this myth making surrounding the game. The idea that we talk about it as if there is a secret inner team that is really responsible for Hollow Knight Silksong, but then there's all these other people who contributed to it in non-meaningful ways, and people think that this is harmful, this kind of myth-making, and I do understand why that is, completely. And I think we can get into those fears, but I think the conversation you and I are most interested in having is this breakdown in communication surrounding the difference and the identification of ownership versus authorship. 2 completely different things, especially when we talk about collaborative art making, a very specific kind of thing, as you said, because I think it's easy for anyone to imagine that almost everyone else involved outside of Team Cherry, outside of that 3 core person team, when you look at translators, when you look at QA testers, contractors, these are essential people. Essential. Nobody's arguing that. Absolutely not. We know that for the game to exist in the way that it does in so many people's hands, you need these people. But is it fair? And I'm genuinely asking this. I'm coming from a place of trying to enhance my own understanding. Is it fair to say that maybe these people are executing, they are supporting, they are refining, their work makes the game maybe better? Oftentimes it makes it possible. But is that the same as authorship? So
I do real quick want to push back a little bit on something that you said here. We said, like, no one is arguing that it's not made by 3 people. And I think that this comes to, so like, like the statement that, like, we all understand and agree that when someone says, like, a 3-person team made this game, that there's like this implied, but that's actually not true. And I think you and I and a lot of people who are like really plugged into games media and like the consumption of games and stuff like that, I think we understand that. But I don't know if that's the general consensus. And I think that a lot of time when this sort of stuff gets shared, you look at like the stages it gets shared on, right? So someone like Jeff Keighley loves to point out how many people are working on a game for a trailer that he's showing, right? And this was kind of part of the conversation at Summer Game Fest this year, when like it felt like every single game that he showed off, he was like, oh, this is made by a 5-person team in blank, blank, blank.
Okay.
Now, is it inaccurate to say like, oh, Hollow Knight Silksong is being made by a 3-person team of Team Cherry? I'm like, no, it's not inaccurate, because Team Cherry is 3 people. Like, you look at their website in the same way that we look at the credits of Silksong, and we can say like there are 3 people who are listed as a part of Team Cherry. But it is inaccurate to say like it was made exclusively by 3 people. And this is also where this is where the conversation comes from for me, where like exactly what you're saying, I don't have the answer about how do we define who made a thing, because yes, every single person who is listed as in the credits, localizers or PR or the orchestra, those people were essential to the creation of Hollow Knight Silksong, and you can't argue that they were not. But it does beg the question though, like, does the localizer say, oh, I made Hollow Knight? And that we all understand what they mean by that. Because when someone says like, oh, I made this, I feel like there's this like implied, like I was like
an artistic driver. You are responsible for, you are one of the people making a what if call that you would say in having worked on production, right? It's like, you're making decisions concerning design, story, tone, mechanics. These are what if calls.
Yeah. And so I think a lot of the opinions that I think, just to speak for myself, that I am going to express in this episode, I think are malleable. And like, I'm looking to hear what you think, and I'm looking to like potentially have my mind changed through this discussion, because I do think it is so nuanced. And I do think that there are so many different directions that people are taking it in. And so in preparation for this episode, like there's a podcast from VGBs that sort of discussed this a little bit. And they sort of get into the idea of like, okay, not 3 people made this. So it's inaccurate to say like, these headlines that are saying 3 people made this. But the thing that I kind of want to discuss about it is like, so what do we do about that? And how do we have that conversation? And is there a way to frame it then in a way that is accurate and all that stuff?
I think I'm also interested too in this fear of naming the 3-person dev team and how that cascades and affects other games. And
yes,
there's kind of this narrative of the myth making is going to erase a lot of the labor that is behind the actual production of games. And that fear is that the tiny genius team will be weaponized against workers who make games more sustainable. It will give people a reason to eschew them from the narrative further, and then eventually get to a point where that's not just affecting the narrative, it's affecting actual games and who is hired and what the expectations are for those people that are hired to make games.
Yeah, I agree. So there are a lot of things that we just sort of like talked about. There are a lot of different like ways to direct this conversation. But if I could steer it in one specific way first, and then I think we can branch out into sort of some of the other like nuances of it. But like, I want to talk about authorship.
Yeah.
And how we define authorship in collaborative projects. And the ways that like, this has been a very, not just with Silksong, but this has been a very sort of like frequent discussion happening with video games recently about like this question of who is a game developer, right? Can you say that a voice actor is a game developer? Can you say that the cello player in the orchestra for Silksong, are they a game developer? And people have very different like feelings on this. And I think the answer is it's nuanced, and I think it is also contextual. Because for me, my answer is, if you are listed in the credits of the game as working on the game, I think you are technically fall under the umbrella of game developer. But is that cello player going to go out and say like, I'm a game developer? And it's like, I thought you were a cello player. It's like, well, I am, but I'm in a game. You know what I mean? Like I think it is contextual based on sort of how we're having this discussion and who is having the conversation and for what reasons. But I want to throw it to you, Jake. Like, how do you view authorship of a project like this? The three people who are part of Team Cherry, are they the sole authors of this game? How does that work for you?
Yeah, buckle up.
Yeah.
Because this is also something that I think I am exploring and discovering in the act of excavating this issue. Because I think if I were to talk about a film, for example, and how a film is credited, nobody would look at a blockbuster movie and be like, that movie was made by the localization team, though their work absolutely critical for distribution of that movie. Instead, I think that authorship is, and I'm not even saying this is correct, I'm just saying how it's associated. It is associated with things like the director or a screenwriter or a showrunner. And notably, I do think that games specifically are maybe resisting this clarity because they are so collaborative. But I do think that the principle holds. So just kind of generally, when I think about authorship, I think that this is a quote. I don't know who said it, but there's like a ringing in my head of the author is not the one who writes, but the person who decides what's written.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, and I feel like that is something that kind of speaks to me in this particular scenario. And I also wonder if, like, I'm somebody who's no, please chew away. I am somebody who I think you ever hear about like a directorial vision? Somebody describes their art as so like though a piece of art can be made by many hands, a vision is singular.
Yep.
And I find that vision is kind of coming from maybe one mind or one team, and how you can kind of associate things with a more specific perspective. And I do think that like we like the idea of perspective is so important when we talk about art, and whose perspective we are demonstrating on the page. And I think that like what Team Cherry is creating and like what their perspective is, I don't want that to get lost or diluted in this, like every single person who touches the game is now part of that vision, part of that, like there's like an artistic authority at play there. So that's something that I struggle with. And also just as somebody who is actively writing a book, and I have meetings with my editor. Like is my editor writing the book?
See, that's like this thing, and I think you were sort of hitting on this a little bit. It's like we do have like implication, like there are implied meanings when we talk about art in a lot of other mediums, but it feels like in video games we are so resistant to like understanding those implied mediums, those implied like ideas and statements. It's like what you're saying. You're writing a book. You are the author of the book. But is the person who edits your book also the author? So if I were to say Jake wrote this book, is that inaccurate? Because obviously you sat down and you typed it all out and whatever, or maybe you're writing it handwritten. I'm really not sure. Maybe you're an ink and quill kind of guy. I think that'd be very fun. But like it is that thing about like there's an implied additional team behind the idea of saying Jake wrote this book, in the same way that like you listened to the new Taylor Swift album. And it's like, there's this implied understanding that we all have that like Taylor Swift was not the one pressing record and then running over to the microphone and picking up her guitar and playing it and then running over and pressing stop. And she's not the one comping her vocal takes together and all that stuff. Like there's so many people who are involved with this, but when we talk about it, it is attributed to a single person or a single band or a single artist or whatever. Do we need to say, Critical Error made by Jake Steinberg and Peter Szpytek and every single person who works at YouTube, the platform this is hosted on,
right?
Or is there an implied understanding of how this works?
Right. That's an interesting extrapolation, right? Because then it's like every single person that played a role in the art getting from my brain to your hands is now an integral part of this art making. Yes. And you can extrapolate that out in like so many different ways. And while all of those people are, I think, important and at times critical, I push back on this authorship is I think what's so important. But like, I think we would have a real issue on our hands if like the credits to movies weren't listing all of the people that worked on them, which for the most, largely they, I mean, that is a problem. That is a problem. I'm close enough specifically to know that is not the case, but that's neither here nor there. But I think, again, just to zone back in, our problem is really with what the issue that manifests when media, specifically the journalism class, maybe eschews the fact that this game was made by more than 3 people. And I I don't know if this is the direction you want to go in or not, but I do think that this is important. I saw a lot of responses to that NPR piece that in their post they gave a nod to there being 3 people. The tweet was, or the skeet. Hollow Knight was a Kickstarter-backed project that obliterated expectations. Now, after years of rumors, memes, and anticipation, the 3-person indie developer Team Cherry has delivered the sequel. And I just want to say, from completely random people, this is putting quote posts aside, just the first responses are 3 people plus like 107 non-people. The credits show a lot more than 3 people. So you have people pushing back on this. But again, I just want to make extremely clear, if you click on that NPR piece and you actually read what it says, it's almost impossible to believe that only 3 people created this game. In recent years, the gaming industry has been defined by mass layoffs, shrinking budgets, and studios scrambling to replicate blockbuster success with Hollywood-sized spending. Yet, Team Cherry, along with dozens of coders and others, working quietly and deliberately, has crafted something that rivals the work of those massive studios. I do not have a problem with what was written there.
Can I also ask too? So, like, I saw a lot of people were upset about the post on Blue Sky about it by saying the 3-person indie developer Team Cherry has delivered the sequel. And I do have, like, this is genuine curiosity from me, right?
Yes.
About, and I know that you and I are of the same opinion about this, but I'm like, the people who are mad about the phrasing of this, is that inaccurate to say that the 3-person development team, Team Cherry? Because, you in the same way that we can look at the credits of Silksong and understand, like, no, more than 3 people made this, we can also look at the about section of Team Cherry's website, and there are three people there, So, like, to me, I read this and I understand that, okay, 3 people on the team, but then also with the way that video games work, there are a lot of other hands that are sort of touching this. And then to your point, it, like, a lot of people are taking that first sentence you read from the actual body of the article out of context by saying it's almost impossible to believe that only 3 people created this game. And obviously the response is like, well, yeah, it is almost impossible to believe that, because that's not true. But then, as you say, like, they do go on to clarify, like, Team Cherry, along with dozens of coders and others, quietly working deliberately and whatever. Like, some of the pushback that I sort of read online and that I followed up with, I was talking to Jesse Vitelli from Restart.Run. I was talking with and John Warren from VGBs, who's the podcast that we referenced earlier. Like, it seems like a lot of the frustration is the way that, like, these sorts of articles tend to not present the nuance in a way that fits into a headline, because that's true, right? You wouldn't write, Hollow Knight Silksong made by 3 people, parentheses, others too, because that's like, it's a headline. It's gonna be short, sweet, whatever.
But really quick, but can we even clarify within that there is a legitimate difference in the material size of the development structure of what's happening with Hollow Knight Silksong when compared to most games that have the kind of reach and that this game does? Like there is something different there that is materially different.
Yes, and I also believe, though, that so, like, of course, like, you are not going to be clarifying the nuance of that in the headline, but just speaking about this specific NPR article, because other articles have done this, and other articles have done this poorly, in my opinion. But I think this is an article that does it all right, in that it does mention the nuance of it. It does mention, like, hey, it is not made by 3 people. I think like, you can, if you take it completely out of context, it does say, like, it's hard to believe that this is made by only 3 people, but then it then clarifies and is like, it's not. But then also this is the question for me. I'm like, is it inaccurate to say that it was developed by Team Cherry, a 3-person studio? Because I'm like, that's not inaccurate, in that Team Cherry is a 3-person studio and it was developed by them. But then the question also becomes, if we are saying that is inaccurate, is it inaccurate to say then that Team Cherry developed Hollow Knight Silksong? Because Team Cherry exists, it has 3 people in it as, like, full-time workers.
Yeah.
And then it, hired out a lot of other additional work on this thing, hired out an orchestra, hired out, localizers and, other coding work and all that. Are those people part of Team Cherry? Because the answer is no, right? In terms of who's, like, listed as being a part of them. So that's where I start to, like, run into the question about, like, I don't know what the solution to this is. So go on, Jake.
No, and there is a way of, I want to get into this in a second, but there is a way of looking at this as like a labor politic as well, because then the like, what is Team Cherry, this question? And it's like, oh, okay, so all of these people, maybe in a perfect world to someone, all of the people that worked on this game would be part of Team Cherry. And there is a almost privileged class here to be the full-time member of Team Cherry, whereas everyone else doesn't get to benefit from that umbrella and is only treated as a lesser contractor, even though that is a inaccurate representation of the amount of work that they have put into the game in theory. But I think that what's interesting about this is that I find that a lot of the arguments being like, it wasn't just 3 people, almost want to abandon the concept of authorship entirely and flatten the roles of every single person that worked onto the game into an equivalence. And I don't think that helps anyone, because recognizing authorship is not, okay. You know what's interesting? If I have a book come out, I think that there is I'm making this up, this is not a real term, but I think that there is this concept of artistic responsibility, where when this book comes out and it is criticized, the thing that is getting criticized is me. Yeah. I have responsibility for that piece of art be existing how it is. And I don't think that you would, I think when a game comes out, there's all of these other extraneous people whose labor we use to produce the game, but they're not necessarily the people that we are criticizing, because their fingerprint isn't on it. So I just want to say, like, I don't think that recognizing authorship is about diminishing labor. I think it's about understanding the structure of creative work, because a game can involve hundreds of hands without being authored by hundreds of people. Because Silksong, like Hollow Knight before it, and I don't know how many less people worked on Hollow Knight when compared to Silksong, but I would say that both of these games they bear the fingerprints of 3 authors. And these authors chose the world and the systems and the story or whatever. They made the game feel the way that it feels. And I think just understanding the structure of this creative work, I think there are a lot of other people involved in realizing and refining that vision. And in a lot of ways, that work ultimately would not be possible without that labor. And that is why they are credited. That is why they are. Yeah, it's I don't think that acknowledging the 3 core people at the center of this is mythologizing as much as it is clarity. Yeah.
So to clarify, by the way, Hollow Knight, according to Moby Games, the original Hollow Knight has 123 people in the credits, 85 professional roles, and 24 thanks. So about 85 people are the people who are like listed as like they worked on this game. Right. And it's interesting the way you talk about like criticism and stuff like that, right? Because like if someone said like, oh, I didn't like, I thought the game wasn't balanced particularly well. It is like, is the localizer like, well, damn. You know what I mean? Like no, right? Like they didn't have anything to do with that. So I think it gets tricky and a little bit messy. I think about like the things that I've created, right? I am on the sort of brink of releasing a full-length album. And in the band, there are 7 people. There's me. We've got a drummer, we've got a bassist, we've got an electric guitar player, we've got a trombone player, saxophone, and trombone. That's a lot of people to keep track of, and to keep track of when it comes to like authorship, right? Because I sit down and I write a song on my guitar and then I show it to the band. And then Joe, our saxophone player, he wrote, let's just say like 75% of all the horn charts and stuff like that for this music. And so we are the 2 main authors of this in terms of sitting down and actually writing what is going to be on the recording. But is that the end of it? No, because like there are other people involved, right? The people who like recorded, like performed on it and everything like that. You could never say that it was only my ideas that went into this thing. But I do think that you could say this is my project because I'm spearheading it and I'm the creative. I have the creative vision with it and everything like that. And this is something you and I have talked about before in reference to this is like, okay, so Joe's girlfriend, Sydney, sings on one of the tracks. We have an instrumental track where she gets some ahs and it sounds very pretty. She came into the studio. She wrote the ah track, whatever. She is performed on it. She will be credited in it. But is she the author of that song? In the same way that like I run all my songs by Elena before I show them to the band. Is she the author of this album? Do you know what I mean? I think it's really complicated because part of the answer is yes, she was a part of the process. And like think about Sydney. Sydney is on the album. That is indisputable fact. She will be credited on the album. But is it like her? Would you say like this is Sydney's album? Would you be like, oh, Sydney, like congratulations on your album that just came out? I think the answer is no, right?
I think I just discovered something through this story.
Yeah.
I think something that we are running up against, and I think something that is hard to avoid, is just this general sense of giving credit to people is good and it's something you should do.
Yes.
And sharing in success is nice and good.
Yep.
And any sense of trying to stratify that or delineate that is seen as bad and selfish and maybe even exploitative.
I think that is a part of this thing because, as you pointed out, like games media specifically is so in tune with the idea of exploitation.
Yeah.
Right. I absolutely. And I feel like everyone has had this happen to them, but like I can specifically think of a moment where I made a video for someone. I was contracted to make a video.
Yeah.
I did not write the video. It was a script that was given to me by someone else who had written it. I did the VO for it. I cut all the footage together. Every part of the video making process. And then it was shared by the person who contracted me to make the video. And he was like, I'm so proud of this thing that I produced. And I was sitting there and I was like, are you kidding me? You know, yes, it is true that it would not have been possible if you had not done that, you know, but I am also sitting here like, but I made the video. You know, so how does that work? And I think that people are very, very in tune with this feeling of being exploited, especially in games media, that they do not want anyone to feel the way that I felt. But
of course,
to me, and I don't know, I do not know the members of Team Cherry. Maybe we could give them a call, although I believe they're in Australia. So,
oh, g'day! Oh, get out of that kangaroo pouch.
Yeah, I think
boomerangs.
I think that it's nighttime there, is I suppose what I'm getting at.
Oh, good night. Good night.
Fair dinkum. But I'm curious, like how it makes that team feel to have sort of the this be the conversation. You know, and it's not to say that they wouldn't appreciate it's not that they have no interest in crediting those people. Of course they do. But when it comes down to like the authorship of this game, it feels like the authorship is sort of being distributed to people who might not even claim to be the author themselves.
Right. It's funny. This discourse is so kind of loose in a way that I'm not even really sure if there is a problem being laid at Team Cherry's feet specifically, or if it is wholly contained within the kind of people talking about the game space.
Yeah. I don't think anyone has an issue with Team Cherry. Because I think it's about the way that we talk about it, right? Because Team Cherry has done everything they've needed to do, right? They have listed the people in the credits, ostensibly everyone who worked on it. I don't think Team Cherry would say that it was made by only 3 people. I guess I don't have that in front of me. But like I look at like Local Funk, who made Balatro, and he says a lot. He's like, I am not like. He's sort of flip-flopped back and forth on this over time, but he's like, I am not the creator of Balatro, because so many other people had their hands on this thing. And I think that's great. But it also then becomes this question of like, how do we even refer to this if we're not allowed to imply or like have the understand, like the general understanding that there is implication going on when you say like, oh, this guy made this game.
And maybe I'm misreading that statement, but to me that does read as somebody who is talking about something different from what we are talking about exactly. And I think it reads as somebody trying to show gratitude and trying to say that their success is, you know, by virtue of a lot of people supporting them, which is true of all success, because life is not a meritocracy, obviously.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get it. I think that there is this bit of, as you kind of talked about earlier, this bit of anxiety and paranoia, specifically in the game space, just because, like, I don't know, underappreciated labor, the fact that we know, like, studios have hidden a crunch, massive crunch. Have
Yes.
there's been underpaid contract workers. The image of the plucky auteur is something that they can use in like a marketing sense to erase workers that are more or less invisible. So this kind of anxiety around wanting to give credit where credit is due, even if that credit isn't authorship, is just like kind of making the whole thing really murky to talk about. Yeah.
So let me hit you with this question then too,
Please.
because I agree with a lot of this, but then also like when I think about it in another example, it makes my skin crawl a little bit.
Ooh, okay. Yeah.
So like earlier this year, Death Stranding 2 comes out.
Yeah.
Later this year, Kirby Air Riders comes out.
Sure.
And like so many people like to say like, oh, Kojima's Death Stranding 2. And when they talk about like the things that are going on in Death Stranding 2, people like to say Kojima is doing this. When it comes to Kirby Air Riders and anything that Masahiro Sakurai has worked on, people attribute him as the sole author of this thing.
Love this.
And for me,
yeah,
I don't really like that either. Do you know what I mean? This idea that like, no, one guy didn't do all of this. And it's not to say it's not his vision. It's not to say, you know, that Kojima, it was not Kojima's vision to make this game like this. Of course it was. But I do not like when things get attributed to a single person. So I think for me, I want things to be like attributed to a studio. So like that's why for me, I'm like, oh, saying Team Cherry made this game. That feels all right because that is multiple people. And I do think that there is an implied understanding of there are other people who worked on this thing because that's how studios make games, by contracting people. But when you say Sakurai made Kirby Air Riders, that's when I start to be like, I don't think there's that implied, like so multiple people worked on this.
Here's what's happening here. It's that I think what's happening in both of these scenarios, with particularly with Sakurai, because I'm more familiar with it, is that we are conflating now authorship with labor. And I think that Sakurai, part of the myth making behind Sakurai is that he works really, really hard. He doesn't take a break. He has referenced these jokes himself in his presentations. There's like this story about him hurting his hand and having hand cramps because he was playing Smash Brothers, testing the game himself on 2 controllers at the same time, like a crazy person. So part of the myth making surrounding Sakurai is not surrounding his authorship necessarily, though that's a part of it too, but it's surrounding this idea that he is putting in more labor or more visible, tangible labor than anyone else working on that game, which we can reasonably state Sakurai is not putting in more work than 50 employees at his studio combined. I think we can reasonably state that.
Yeah.
And so there is this degree where I think that that conversation is also not about authorship. It's about labor. And I think that when you take like this like cries of labor and this overworked person and this all that stuff, and you lay that at the feet of the person who is at the very, very top, that's a problem for me.
Yeah, I agree because it's that thing where like that situation where I was talking about where like I did all this work for it to be recognized by the one person who like I guess was the one who asked me to do it. And I was like, okay, but like, did you do the work? You know, it's the removal of credit from the studio and the people who did make it. So I don't know, but it is so interesting though that I feel differently about it depending on the project. And I think that depending on the way that people talk about it. What I will say though that I think is interesting is that these conversations, I feel like this sort of like discourse on social media and whatever doesn't happen when Death Stranding comes out, when Elden Ring comes out and everyone says Miyazaki this, Miyazaki, when Miyazaki is like one of 2 directors on Elden Ring, you know, like these conversations don't happen.
I think I know
when
why.
These things happen. But it happens when people are talking about specific team sizes. Yeah, why?
I think I know why. So I think what's going on here, if I may take a shot, is that there is a degree to which the Sakurais, the Miyazakis, the Kojimas, proximity to them in the games media space is seen as a good thing. It's seen as a good and powerful thing. It's seen as something to use to your advantage and something that is communicating a kind of familiarity with the game's space. It is, and I think that it reads to people why logically you would use Kojima or Sakurai or whatever in a headline to try to say something, that you're communicating a level of familiarity that is good and correct. But because Team Cherry is not a Toby Fox, is not a Sakurai.
There's not like an auteur to it.
So because that does not exist, we don't have that same kind of what we're proving, what we're saying. So instead, when you bring up Team Cherry, when you bring up the three people, what's happening there is that you are not proving that you are familiar with something. You're not demonstrating your gaming proximity, your citizenship, your knowledge. You're demonstrating actually you don't know how games are made.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's fair. And I will also say that I think that, like, if I had to guess, a lot of the people who are irritated with this conversation about Silksong and Team Cherry are probably also irritated about, like, when people attribute to just Kojima or Sakurai or whatever. But
Who's
it's just
not
like
irritated with Kojima at this point?
But like, I think that, like, it's just interesting to me that these conversations come up whenever we talk about game team sizes, but never about, like, the idea of the auteur. Because also it makes me wonder too about, like, what does it take to even be seen as an auteur? And maybe this is a conversation for a different time. But like, I look at someone like Sam Lake, who his vision is so clear in like Alan Wake. Mm-hmm. But he's not someone, like, I feel like people aren't ever, at least the way people talk about Alan Wake to me, I'm like, people so rarely are like, you know, Lake's Alan Wake 2 in the same way that people say Kojima is Death Stranding 2.
Whoa, this is like psychological, I think. This is this is, I think, largely concerned with what and I do think this is related, kind of like what, not Sam Lake, but what the image of Sam Lake connotates. What you know what I mean? There's an idea that the image of Miyazaki connotates a depth, a higher cultural understanding of video games. Same with a Miyamoto or a Kojima. Whereas Sam Lake, maybe partially because he's not Japanese. And the degree to which we do you think
it comes from Japanese studios?
A little bit. I think it's easier to kind of mythologize something that is foreign in a way that is covertly exploitative. So I do wonder if, because Sam Lake does not read as the kind of Japanese auteur game maker that we are so familiar with, that there's like we don't cast him in that role.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because it's like, you know, we're American, and it's like, but he is foreign. He's Swedish, I think, or something. You know what I mean? Finnish, maybe. Finnish,
I think that's actually yeah.
But yeah, I think there's like, I think that's part of it. I also think probably part of it too is that, like, Kojima and Miyamoto and Sakurai and all these people have been around for longer. Not that Sam Lake hasn't been around, but like Remedy games haven't, like, broken in the mainstream kind of in the same way.
Yeah, that's true. And they haven't broken in the mainstream for things that I think are kind of currently valued in the gaming zeitgeist.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
it's interesting.
Guy. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I mean, auteur stuff, like, that's a whole different conversation, but I do think it is linked to this conversation in a way that is meaningful. So when it comes to, like, the myth making though, Jake, like, I think this is where I take issue with the idea of, like, this is where I am, like, on board with, like, hey, I'm on board with the whole, like, hey, don't say that it was made by three people sort of situation. But, like, this is where, like, this is the main reason for why I believe that is sort of harmful, is that it is the idea that, like, it was just made by these three guys and that's it. And that you have, like I said, like, someone like Jeff Keighley getting on stage, and for every single one of the trailers for indie games at Summer Game Fest, he had to make sure that he's, like, made by 6 people in Denmark, you know, without any of the context of why you are bringing that up and what that means. Where do you fall with, like, sort of the myth making side of it?
Peter, Apple started with Steve Jobs in his garage. You know, so here's my thing. I think that there is this perspective that the myth is convenient for a video game executive. If you can believe that 3 people really did make a game like Silksong alone, then why keep these large, expensive departments around? Now we can say with data that we should cut these teams because you can produce a hit like Silksong without them. I don't think that's happening. And listen, what do I know? I'm just a little idiot over here. Okay, I'm simply the host of the Critical Error podcast. I have a hard time believing, in the same way that Steve Jobs starting Apple in his garage, in the same way that any band only consists of this many people, in the same way that a Christopher Nolan movie is given Christopher Nolan is given authorship over that movie, though he works with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. I don't currently believe at this moment that is a real thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I did ask. I asked people, like, as people talked about this, I'm like, well, is the problem that it is just lacking in nuance when you say made by 3 people, or what? And some of the response was like, yeah, no, that, but also like the problem that, these companies are seeing this and saying, well, we need to do this and we're going to cut people. And then so I sort of asked a follow up and was like, yeah, but is that happening? It's exactly the question you're having. Do we know that that's happening, or is this just something that we are worried about happening because it sounds right, because it feels right? And I kind of didn't get a what I would say a satisfying answer to that.
People are going to say yes.
Sort of moved on.
They're going to say yes. They're going to put my little YouTube time code in the video on the comments, and to do like, is this actually happening? And they're just going to write the word yes, and I'm going to get mad, and I'm going to
yes. I'll say this, like there was an interesting the one piece of information that was pointed my way is a specific thing. So some people were saying like, oh, I've seen it on LinkedIn or whatever, and I'm like, not specific enough for me. Because I'm like you can say that you saw it on LinkedIn, but like for me as a journalist, or I guess former journalist, I'm like, I need to look at that with my eyes.
Yeah.
And if you can't provide it, then it's just not a source that I'm willing to trust or put much stock into.
Peter, I don't know how much time you spent on video game LinkedIn, by the way, but it's the worst place on earth, and I don't think we should be taking anything like about what's being posted on LinkedIn, video game LinkedIn.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I don't think we should be taking anything that's happening over there as like a reflection of reality, as much as it is a reflection of people trying to grow their audience on LinkedIn.
Yeah, yes, because if you were a person who's ever spent any time on LinkedIn, you know that it's terrible. It's just terrible. Can I real quick just air out a completely unrelated frustration I have with LinkedIn as someone who's looking for employment?
I want to drink this up. Yes.
Why the fuck? Hey, LinkedIn, come here. Yeah. LinkedIn, come in close. LinkedIn, I'm going to turn my mic. I'm going to turn this up a little bit so you can like really hear this. LinkedIn. Yeah. Oh yeah. Wait. Let me get the camera going a little bit.
Yeah.
LinkedIn.
Tell LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Why are you showing me the timeline out of order? And you're like, hey, apply to this job. And then I'm like, okay, cool. I'll apply to this job.
Why?
And then it's like, hey, this job listing has been closed. And I'm like, what? They just posted this. And I look and it's 4 weeks old.
Peter, there's an exciting new opportunity. It's 3 weeks old and the job has already been closed.
They found them. LinkedIn. What are we doing?
Come on. Get a grip. LinkedIn to what exactly? The 2004 job market?
Right. Come on now. Grow up. Anyway, that's all. Thank you for my little aside. Anyway, the thing about like the one thing that I did see in regards to also got to fix my camera. I don't have this saved as a preset like a dummy. The one piece of information that someone pointed me to that I did take a look at and I thought was interesting is an article that came out earlier this year called the Deprofessionalization of Video Games was on full display at PAX East. Do you remember when this came out?
No, this is news to me.
This is on GameDeveloper.com. Okay. And this is an article by Bryant Francis, the senior editor there, where basically it discusses about like at PAX East, like we're starting to see that like studios are trying to impress like each other and people less because of the way that just like the culture has sort of shifted a little bit. And the thing that it brings up here is talking about like the way that a lot of these indie games have really shaped the industry, which is true and interesting in the way that like all of these publishers are like, we want Balatro. We want Balatro. And Balatro was, as they understand it, made by one person, right? One guy. Which obviously isn't true in the sense of what we've sort of been talking about, but also kind of is true in the sense that it's a guy who sat down and made a video game on Unity or whatever. I don't know what he made it on, but you know what I mean? And so it's basically talking about this idea that, yes, there are major publishers that are looking for these indie successes, these very like low cost, high profit, high reward indie successes because of things like Balatro, because of things like Silksong. That wasn't necessarily mentioned in this article, but like that is another thing that you can add to the pile of sort of examples. But so this sort of stuff is happening to some degree, but the question is, to what end? And is it something that is so widespread that the conversation absolutely must stop no matter what?
I would like to make a stupid point as well, if you would allow that.
Go right ahead.
Is there a degree to which some of the success of Balatro, Hollow Knight, is there any little tiny bit of a degree to which some of that success can be pinned on the fact that these games have strong identities in the larger gaming landscape in a way that you could even say you could identify them as games that were demonstrably not made by committee, games that were not victim to the AAA throes of game development? Isn't that something worth recognizing at all?
100%, right?
So
this idea that
what's
the
issue with identifying this and pulling this out and saying let's put resources into this one guy's idea that is clearly from a perspective that is unique and individual because it came from one guy.
So sorry, what is your question about it?
I guess my question is this: is that you go to one of these like little dinky shows where people are trying to get eyes on their game, and then maybe at this show you pick up a publisher. It's like, damn, I've got a publisher now, and now you're putting resources into that game. All of these other people are working on that game. You're putting resources into one person's artistic vision, but like, while still being clear that thing that you're putting resources into, the reason you even decided to put resources into it was because you were compelled by the authority, the authorial vision of that thing.
Yeah.
Is that so wrong? Is the game
the whole discussion,
suddenly,
right? Like, I don't know.
Is the games suddenly now made by all of these other people? Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. There's something about this that I think we're like getting away from something that's important about these games.
Yeah, because I do think it's interesting too. Like, I think about like Animal Well. That's another one that is like very largely credited as made by one guy. Billy Basso is his name, and that he is the person who made this whole game. In the credits, there are 137 people in the credits according to Moby Games. 92 professional roles, 35 thanks. And let me just read you the credits that are listed here. Okay. Created by Billy Basso. Business, Dan Alderman. Marketing, Dan Alderman. Published by Big Mode, Jason. Spanish localization, French localization, Italian localization. So like in the credits for this game, there's really one like lead developer, and it is Billy Basso, and it is just said created by, and everyone else is localizers, trailer editing, testing feedback, trademark filing, stuff like Discord moderators, stuff like that. And that is not to, discredit their work. Of course, these people worked on it, but like, how do we discuss something like Animal Well, which of course was not created exclusively by Billy Basso? I'm looking at the Portuguese localizer, I'm looking at the Korean localizer, but it is this question about like, so how does authorship work with this? And I think it is hard for us to come to an understanding on it because there is so much nuance surrounding it. And in my opinion, games, as we talked about sort of at the beginning, are kind of unique in that for whatever reason, we are unable to all collectively understand the implication that comes with saying, hey, did you listen to the new Sabrina Carpenter album? Is Sabrina playing the bass on that one? I don't know. I don't know if she can play it or not, but
should we ever, in a perfect world, let's say we fixed this issue.
Yeah.
Would one ever refer to Team Cherry?
Explain more.
From the perspective of somebody who is like, we should
not be referring to this. Yeah, that's a quick question. And I think this harkens back to, I think maybe you asked this before, but like, is Team Cherry like, is it accurate to say this game was made by Team Cherry if all of these contractors decidedly, unequivocally do not work for Team Cherry because they're outside contractors by definition? And like, to me, then I'm like, well, that's inaccurate because Team Cherry made this game.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that also there is a understanding, like, okay, how about this? I wrote a lot for thegamer.com. I made videos for thegamer.com. I wrote a lot of articles for thegamer.com, wrote a lot of articles for a lot of different websites. But when I sign up as a contractor, right, as a freelancer for those websites, there is I am signing away my ownership of this. So now the website has paid me for the labor, and it has also paid me for the ownership of my work. And how does that how does that sort of factor in, right? Like, are the people who
crazy.
were
You putting it in this perspective is just like making me reflect on the fact that like we're making a kerfuffle over employees that, to our knowledge, were like fairly paid for the job that they were asked to do.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like you're you got paid as a contractor to do this thing. And in my experience with contracts, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong necessarily, I'm just saying this is sort of the reality of it. Like, in my experience with working as a contracted worker, like, I largely don't own the things that I create. And now you could never say that. I mean, like, you couldn't say, hey, me, the editor-in-chief of The Gamer, I wrote this, not Peter, because you didn't.
Right.
I'm properly credited in the same way that Team Cherry is not saying, I actually also played the flute on this track.
And I gotta tell you, so the weird wrinkle in this that I'm considering for myself personally, that I don't think is super relevant, which is why I haven't brought it up till now, is that I have worked on entertainment things that I cannot talk about, but like my like words are reflected directly in the final product. But I obviously don't have ownership of those things, and even if you could maybe argue that I maybe have a degree of authorship over them. But when people ask me about this, they're like, oh, isn't that so unfair? And I always hit them with no. Because to be completely honest, outside of like one or two scenarios, I'm being paid in a way that maybe offsets my lack of authorship.
Oh, sure.
And right, like that's kind of like part of the deal. And there's also a degree to which it's like, I didn't work on that movie. I worked for the studio to do this thing. I was their employee, and they just happened to apply some of my work to this thing. And I don't feel like I do have ownership or authorship over that thing. Even if some might say, Jake, you know, there was a movie that came out once, and I got texts from a dozen friends that I've worked with being like, did you write this movie? Because they could tell it was me. Yeah. And I'm not even in the credits of that sucker. Yeah. So it's like, so I get how this like authorship specifically can be a weird thing in collaborative art making, but I don't know. Some of this stuff I just find to be structurally, yeah.
It is a weird thing, but I also feel like, for me personally, as someone who creates collaborative art, I do have an understanding of what I have made and what I haven't, and what my contributions to something are. And like, yes, put me in the credits. You know, like, let me think. Like, I don't know. Put me in the credits. If I worked on it, put me in the credits. But I you know, if I'm not the person who like made the thing, I'm not going to pretend like I made that. You know. And I'm not, I have the understanding of what my contribution means and what that actually looks like tangibly when it comes time to say, like, here we go.
Peter, is there anything you want to kind of want to do to put a bow on this conversation?
Yeah, all of this is a prank. I'm just kidding about all this. I don't know. Like, no, I mean, like, when I say that, I mean, like what we said sort of at the top, where I'm like, I'm open to hearing other perspectives on this. And I think that there is no right or wrong way to view this. But I think that it is important to discuss context and discuss the idea of authorship when it comes to crediting people, and when it comes to discussing how a piece of collaborative art is made.
That was delightful. Thank you for that wrap up. That was exactly what I wanted.
I'm so glad. Jake, have you written something for me?
I have. But before we get to that, can I remind everybody that each and every week we put out this podcast, we actually put out a second complete podcast.
We do.
That's a little more loosey-goosey, if you wouldn't mind me applying that adjective to our bonus
It's breezy. It's easy.
Ooh!
It's light.
This week we talked about the Nintendo Direct that is, of course, happening this Friday. It's a very exciting time. Got into some of our opinions on some fan favorite franchises like The Legend of Zelda.
We did.
And there might even be some special preview info and at the tail end of the bonus pod.
Who knows?
This week. Who knows?
Maybe one of us played a new game that isn't out yet.
So I will say, I do think that this is a good week to, if you want to get a chunky bonus pod, this is a good week to check that out on patreon.com/criticalerror.
I like to think of the main episode that we do as a cake and the bonus episode as kind of like a cupcake or like maybe a finger, sort of like, whatever. I think this week we've got 2 cakes.
Oh,
I think we've got 2 cakes. Yeah. So if you want to check us out, patreon.com/criticalerror. Additionally,
yeah,
you can become a $2, $5, $20 member of the Critical Error Nation. But I would like to give a special shout out to our members of Critical Error Royalty, Mr. Andrew Bokar and Mr. Connor Truelove.
Play the sound!
Andrew Bokar, Connor Truelove.
Wow.
You never know what's going to happen with that sound.
I never do because you make it. And so I'm always delighted and surprised.
Each and every week, Peter, we wrap these episodes up by preparing in advance a written piece to share out loud. And sometimes these pieces go places. I don't know if you saw, but past episode Street Fighter Girls, the short story, a little altered from the version I read on the pod, was just featured in Critical Distance, a roundup of the best writing on video games. So,
which also, can I say, Critical Distance getting a little close to infringing on the copyright of our show.
Ooh, wow.
I'm just saying. How about you keep that distance?
Yeah, keep that critical indeed. Okay.
Yeah. It is critical. Or we're going to have a critical error anyway.
This piece will not be featured on Critical Distance because it is not about video games. But I do need to provide some context before I start this. I think this will be helpful to you and it will be helpful to the reader. I imagine this piece. I've always had this thing I've wanted to write, and I do want to say that this podcast has been incredible in just like giving me an excuse to do a little like creative writing exercise.
Me too. I just like get to think about things maybe not in the way that I normally do, and it's like awesome.
And I have this like note in my phone of like things I want to write and I never got around to. Mm-hmm. And I've always had this thought of a book of short stories, prose, no pictures, just prose about superheroes. And so I imagine this in that book. This is a short story about a superhero.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm so excited.
It's called Rewind.
Okay.
My son is in his room, bent low over Curious George, the paperback curling in his hands like a creature that trusts him. He reads aloud in fragments, to himself more than to me. And he speaks of George as one speaks of a companion encountered daily on the walk to school, a friend whose mischief is never punished, whose leaps never end in harm, a friend who never ends. George tries things, he says, certain, proud. When I grow up, I'm going to try things too. The words lodge under my ribs like coins swallowed, glinting there. He does not know how many times I have already watched him try and fail and fall and fold back into silence. He does not know how many times I have unspooled the hours, reeled him in, rewound the world until the tape snapped in my hands. He does not know that tonight waits for him like a wolf in the bushes. He does not know that this story only has one ending. From the kitchen, I hear him calling. The note carries down the hallway with the brightness of a bell struck and struck again. Dad, want to see my favorite? That voice, it cuts me open every time. The same syllables, the same ache. He appears in the doorway, the book hidden behind his back like contraband. His smile, the unbroken smile of someone who has not yet seen the trap door at the bottom of the world. When he reveals it, it is. Curious George makes pancakes. George spills. George stirs. Batter everywhere. The townsfolk are fed. Laughter, forgiveness, the neatness of a story well told. My son turns the page with reverence to the scatter of blueberries, the secret ingredient. His finger rests there. This is the best part, he says. And I wonder if he chose it because of me. If he remembers the way that I eat them by the handful, the way I hoard sweetness. Or is it only chance, only the comfort of color stories seduce you into believing the smallest choices matter, that fruit folded into batter can stave off hunger, that love folded into time can stave off loss? He looks at me again, waiting, asking the same question always. Want to see my favorite? I collapse the clock. The air thickens. 12 minutes, stretch and snap. He is gone. He is here again. He is here again. He is here again. He is here again. My name is Rewind. And I say, yes, yes, of course. Show me. Show me again. My son is in his room, paging through Curious George Makes Pancakes. George tries things. George never stops trying. And I have made trying into my faith, my ritual, my wound. I flip the moment, I burn the edge, I scrape it clean, I flip it again, I scorch time black, and still I taste the blueberries bright against the char. Thank you.
Damn. Oh my gosh. I have a hard time coming up with something to say.
Yeah, I was really nervous about sharing this, to be honest with you, because I wasn't sure if it was doing what I wanted it to do.
No,
and
it
I
does.
actually I like got confidence in the middle of it, and I was like, oh yeah, I feel like this is actually doing what I wanted to do.
It
Yeah.
does.
Yeah, cool.
Huh.
We got to stop doing this. We hit these
Yeah,
pieces.
we're like, I have nothing to say because I just have to think about it. Yeah. Yeah. Something you said that like kind of like caught my breath a little bit was you were like the trapdoor at the bottom of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's a funny thing to be completely honest with you, when I write fiction, 99% of the time, the character, the protagonist, the narrator is just me.
That's how it always works, right? That's how I feel.
And there's a weird thing here where like I wrote about my son. And it doesn't there's something about this story that doesn't actually feel like me, that is really unusual for my writing. So yeah, so I don't know. I was reflecting on that a lot while writing it. Yeah.
It's phenomenal. It's really
Thank
good. I like the idea of writing as yourself, even in fiction. Justin Pierre Courtney, I think is his name. He's the lead singer and songwriter of the band Motion City Soundtrack.
Oh my God.
I knew
I'm on fire.
Yeah.
And nothing's good. Yeah, okay.
I knew I was speaking to the right guy.
Yeah, of course.
He went to film school to be a scriptwriter. And something that it is like such simple advice, but it's what he applies to his music, and his music is so incredibly specific and personal, in that it's like talking about like the specific things he does in a day sometimes, and how he connects it all. But he says like in film school, like everyone is trying to write the next Pulp Fiction, but you're not Quentin Tarantino. And so his professor was like, again, it's so simple, but it's like, you're not Quentin Tarantino, you're you, write what you know, write about your life. And even if it's fictional, like you're still in there. I'm like, and I definitely see that with you say the piece is just called Rewind.
Rewind, yeah.
I would like to speak for the entirety of the Critical Error Nation here. Dude, you got to make that compilation of short stories. Jesus.
It's funny, I've got like little ideas too of what I would want the other ones to be about.
Yeah.
And oh my God, there's one, my main one called Hero Man. And there's like all these little concepts. I've always loved this idea of a superhero who is jealous of his own alter ego.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because when he's himself, he gets caught up in things like doing the dishes.
Yeah,
and
his life is small.
Who's gonna make dinner? But when he's Hero Man, he finds that not only is he powerful and his options limitless, he feels a deeper love for his wife. He feels things in a way that he doesn't feel when he's just him. You know, there's something.
Write it. It's too good, because that is compelling. Because we all feel that way, right? When we get to for just a brief moment be the person that we want to be, and we're empowered in whatever way that is. Obviously we're not superheroes, but like if you're a singer and you get to perform, or if you're reading or whatever. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
you get to be empowered to be that person, and then it comes crashing down every single time, and you still have to, unclog your drain and whatever. Oh, devastating. Jake, you got to write that.
Thank you. I'd love the opportunity to write some longer things when I maybe sit down with this, because I will say, and then we can wrap things up. I got a criticism in grad school once, not a criticism, a comment, I would say. And it has stuck with me ever since.
What was it?
Like, when you write short stories, you sure tend to go up and up and up and up. And I really am like, yeah, that's true. That's where my head goes. I even when I'm reading it, you can tell that my performance is like grounded in the sense of the tension
escalation
builds.
Yeah,
It's I just like that. And then that ending note where you is like,
drop it. I think maybe not for the regular pod, but like on our bonus pod, again, patreon.com/criticalerror, $5 Critical Error Nation tier and up. Maybe we should have like an episode where we just sort of bring some of the most important criticism we've ever been faced with. Whoa. And sort of talk about how that has shaped us as writers, creators, whatever.
Oh man,
because they're like, I don't have like a lot, but I have enough that I'm like, no, I've thought about these, I've sat with these.
Oh, grad school, don't worry, I've got stories.
Sure.
Oh my god, yeah, great episode. Well,
yeah,
great. I can't wait for that.
Yeah, so if you're interested in that, first of all, let us know in the comments. Also, if you're interested in that, you can support us, patreon.com/criticalerror. Or if you don't have money to throw our way, I get it. It's tough times right now. What you can do is you can click subscribe on YouTube. Ooh. Like this episode, maybe share it with a friend. You can also listen to this. We never mentioned this. You can listen to this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you catch your pods. You can find it. And also, hey, on YouTube right now, there's some weird stuff going on where in the top right in the settings, there is a restricted mode that basically has been turned on for a lot of people, unbeknownst to them. There's no notification for this or anything like that. And a lot of our podcasts have since been restricted since they implemented this mode. And so if you are wondering why you have not been seeing the latest episodes from your favorite creators, obviously we're your favorite creators, clearly. But if you feel like you've been missing out on not just us, but other people as well, go ahead and take a look in that settings bar. And who knows, maybe that restricted mode is on, but I would recommend turning that off if you want to see all of our stuff from here on out.
And even without us, you don't know what you're missing out there on the wide world of YouTube.
That's what I'm saying. There's so much stuff that I feel like I've been missing out because mine was on for a little bit. But hey, we will catch you next week. Thank you so much for listening. Later.
Bye.